I'm not particularly concerned, but I'll certainly return to whatever.
The only thing is that I would, the Commonwealth would preclude any reference to anything that was seen.
Sure. How about,
In her
Mr. Tiffany, can you just ask if there's anything
Hello?
that she saw that has any impact on her testimony at all? And if it does, to put it in writing for the Commonwealth.
I will do that again, when I received a text from her saying, nothing she said changed my opinion. And I'll require witness to be included, but yes.
All right, so you got that statement, and I'm sure Mr. Tiffany will question her about when she saw it. Right, you have no intention. All right, if there's, so think about if there's anything else that you raise as a result.
Hung jury.
All right.
Hung jury or not guilty.
Ms. Blair, your next witness.
The Commonwealth calls Officer Daniel YANIS.
Sorry. Watch stuff on me. Stand over and face the front.
Here's your name. You solemnly swear the evidence given to the court that case down here and shall the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Where's that? Hear ye. I've got it up on the other screen. I'm watching.
Good morning.
Morning.
Could you please state your name?
Daniel
Daniel
YANIS,
YANIS.
And by whom are you employed?
Town of Brookline.
Could you please spell your last name for me, sir?
Yes, Your Honor. YANEZ.
Is Brooklyn near Massachusetts?
And what is your position with the town of Brookline?
I'm a patrol officer.
And how long have you been a patrol officer in the town of Brookline?
I bet
for
you it's to
23
do with
years.
car accident.
And as a patrol officer, what do your duties include?
My duties are to protect and serve within the rules and regulations and policies of the town of Brookline and the Brookline Police.
Were you working on January 28th of 2020?
Yes.
And what did your duties include on that day?
My duty on that evening, I was assigned to the 547 unit.
And what did you do on the 547 unit?
On that particular evening, I was dispatched to 40 Meadowbrook Road for a domestic altercation.
And when you got there, what did you see?
Upon my arrival, as I was stepping out of the vehicle, a young lady was outside of the house, later identified as Susie. She ran towards me. She said that she needed help. She said her father was not breathing. I had asked her if there were any weapons. And then from that point, I went with her into the house.
And where in the house did you go?
As I stepped into the house, at the time when I stepped in, there was a person laying down on the hallway floor.
Oh,
later
email
identified
her.
as Andrew.
And what entrance of the house did you go into?
The front door. Sorry.
Not the back door.
And where was Andrew laying when you got in?
He was laying on his back, and then when I saw him, I went immediately towards him. At the time, I went onto the radio. I requested for a Fallon ambulance. And then
I'm sorry.
and
What
then,
condition was Andrew in?
it appeared as if he was not breathing. And then when I started CPR, I noticed that he was gargling and slightly breathing. As I was checking for his pulse, he had a slight pulse. During that time, officers were coming into the house. I was passed an ambu bag, and as I was about to give him breath, he did breathe into the ambu bag, and then at that point, I realized he did have a slight pulse, and he was breathing. I placed him into the recovery position from that point.
Can you explain for the court what is an ambul bag?
An ambu bag is a device which assists in breathing is a breathing apparatus that,
And did you place that on him?
yes.
Never heard
And
of that. What is
after
it,
that,
an
what did
amble
you do?
bag?
Okay, shortly right after, Brookline Fire and Fallon paramedics showed up on scene, and they took over Andrew. And then from that point, I joined Sergeant Tian and Detective Avila in interviewing Miss McGee.
And where was Miss McGee when you interviewed her?
Upon entering the house, from what I recall, she was standing beside him.
And was she there when you were trying to assist him, trying to assist Mr. Savitz with the ambulance bag?
Well, upon entering, she was standing there. All I remember is just going towards Mr. Savitz. I believe she stepped off to the side into the living room area. And then I just had my full attention on Mr. Savitz from that point. I believe the officers who came in right after me, Sergeant Tian and Detective Avila, went towards her and started the process from there.
And at what point did you join Sergeant Tian and Detective Avila in speaking with Ms. McGee?
Shortly after, once Mr. Savitz was in the hands of Fallon Ambulance and the Brookline Fire paramedics.
And what did Ms. McGee say?
Okay. She said that at approximately 22:45 hours, she had come to the house to discuss with Mr. Savitz an email that she had received. And then at a certain point, the conversation had turned into a verbal altercation,
sounds so
where he
nervous.
started to yell at her to ask her to leave the house. At some point, she stated that he had pushed her several times, to a point once pushing her up against the wall in the living room area, and then another time pushing her towards the kitchen room area, towards the kitchen table, which knocked down some plates and some other things off the table. And then from there, as they were moving around in the area, he had pushed her up against the refrigerator. And then heading towards the hallway, towards the front door, he had at some point grabbed her by the hair and also was pushing her during all that time, asking her to leave the house. As after pushing her up against the refrigerator and pulling her hair and pushing her towards the hallway, is at that point where he had collapsed, and she stated that she started CPR on him.
And where were you when Ms. McGee was giving this statement to you?
We were in the living room area.
And you had mentioned that Ms. McGee indicated that some items had broken in the kitchen. Did you observe anything broken in the kitchen?
Yes.
What did you observe?
Plates, broken plates, and there was some cans, some perishables, foods thrown around.
Now, were there any other officers on scene when you were speaking with Ms. McGee?
Yes, during that time, Officers Soderberg and Officer Russell, as they were entering, they went up to the second floor. The caller, the daughter, Susie and her son and her brother, Harry, were upstairs on the second floor. And during that time, they had gone upstairs to interview them. Also, during that, the whole time, as we're going through the whole area, we asked everybody if anybody needed any medical attention. Everyone had refused any medical attention also during that time.
Did you ask Ms. McGee if she wanted medical attention?
Yes.
And what was her response?
She had refused.
Did you have an occasion to observe Ms. McGee when you were talking to her?
Yes.
Did you observe any injuries to Ms. McGee?
No, I didn't.
Now, where were Officers Soderberg and Russell when they were speaking to the children?
They were upstairs on the second floor in their bedrooms, I believe.
And did you speak to the children?
I did not.
And did anybody take photographs?
Yes.
Who?
Sergeant Tian.
At some point, did somebody arrive to take the children?
Yes.
Who was that?
Patricia Burnson.
And where did Ms. McGee go?
Well, during all this time, she was in our presence in the house.
And what happened to, where did Mr. Savitz go?
He was placed in a Fallon ambulance, and then he was transported to the Beth Israel Hospital.
And at some point, did Ms. McGee go to the Brookline Police Station?
Yes.
And how did she get there?
I believe Detective Kelleher and Avila had transported her to the Brookline Police Station.
Brookline.
At any point, did you make any observations of anything outside the house?
Yes, we observed what we believe was
Was that a going, Bev?
Mrs. McGee's vehicle, which was an Audi, black Audi vehicle.
And at some point, did somebody take photographs of that vehicle?
Yes, Sergeant Tian.
And did anybody else take photographs of that vehicle?
Not that I don't remember. Sorry.
Can you just tell me, officer, do you have any, what kind of training do you have, medical training as far as being a first responder?
Every year we're always, every year first aid, basic first aid training every year. We have to do training every single year for the last 23 years.
And are you trained in CPR?
Yes.
Thank you, officer. I have no further questions.
Morning.
So you wrote a 3-page report, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Do you have that report with you today?
Not with me.
Okay. Did you review it in advance of your testimony here today?
I did.
And when you reviewed it, you found it to be accurate as far as your memory that you recall, correct?
Yes, sir.
And have you prepared for this trial by speaking with the district attorneys in anticipation of trial?
Yes.
Okay. And have you gone over your statements in your report?
Yes.
Okay. What I mean is, have you gone over the statements with the prosecutors in preparing for trial?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't find anything, nothing came up that seemed inconsistent within your report where you had to change anything or anything like that? Right?
No.
When you write these reports, officer, it's fair to say that you know that they're going to be reviewed by your supervisor, correct?
Yes.
So you make every effort to be as accurate and complete as you can be, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that an officer Russell was also present.
Correct.
And Soderbergh.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen any reports written by Officer Russell regarding this particular incident?
No.
Okay. And I do note that, tell me if I'm correct, that in your report, there is specific reference to the interview that was conducted upstairs of Miss Savitz, Suzy Savitz, and making note that Harry, her younger brother, was upstairs also, correct?
Correct.
And when you included that section in your report, is it fair to say that you got that information from talking specifically to Officer Russell, correct?
Yes.
And you tried to be as accurate as you could about what Officer Russell was telling you that Ms. Savitz had told him.
Yes.
And you relied on what Officer Russell told you, including what Susie Savitz said to him in your report. You relied on what he was representing, correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that after you included that in your report, would it be fair to say that then your report was reviewed by a supervisor?
Yes.
And
I think he's very, very nervous. I don't think he's testified before.
As to what he had told
Not at that time, no.
you? Okay, but is it common practice of the Brookline Police Department that when you include
Brookline.
specific statements made to you by your fellow officers and you're including them in the report, that those officers can look at your report and make sure that what you included is accurate?
Correct.
And that's just common procedure within the Brookline Police Department, correct?
Yes.
So you wrote your report that included that information. You wrote your report shortly after the incident, correct?
Within a few hours after.
Okay, and that's also Brookline Police Department procedure, correct?
Yes.
That you write the report and include details and facts close in time to try to ensure that they're accurate and complete, correct?
Correct.
And so it's fair to say, as you sit here today under oath, that what you put in your report that Susie Savitz told Officer Russell in Sonnenberg is accurate and complete.
Yes, sir.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that nowhere in your report, and I want to focus you on just what Officer Russell and Sonnenberg told you about what Suzy told them, that she never said anything that she first heard yelling and thought it was her dad yelling at her younger brother, Harry. She never told me. That's not what you were told by Russell or Sonnenberg, correct?
That is not in the report.
Okay. And there's nothing in your report from officers Russell and Soderberg that Susie told them that she went down and went into the kitchen area while the argument was going on. No?
No.
And that when she was standing in the kitchen area, she saw her mother and father yelling and fighting. That's not in your report, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And that would indicate that they didn't tell you that because you're trying to be accurate and complete, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's nothing in the report where Suzy tells those officers that her father seemed to be in distress while he was arguing. Nothing like that.
No, sir.
There was nothing in the report that Suzy had told those officers that she had talked to her brother, Harry, and told him to stay in the room and not come downstairs. Nothing like that, correct?
No, sir.
In fact, the statement that's included is that Harry was asleep in his room while this was going on.
Correct.
Your report also includes a statement that she said that she witnessed her mother slapping her father in the face and chest. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
But there's nothing in your report that indicates at any time that Suzy Savitz said anything that she saw her mother and father pushing and shoving. That's not in your report, is it?
Not from her point of view, not from her statement.
Not from her statement, correct. And there's nothing in your report that says Susie reported that her mother was slurring her words, is it?
No, sir.
Or that she was stumbling?
No, sir.
In fact, there's nothing in your report about what Susie, that Susie would have said that her mother refused initially to give CPR to her father after he collapsed.
No.
And that she said that her mother said he doesn't need CPR, correct?
Correct.
In fact, your understanding is that once Mr. Savitz collapsed, that Ms. McGee immediately began administering CPR.
That was her statement.
That was Suzie's statement, correct?
No, Mrs. McGee.
Okay, that was Ms. McGee's statement. Officer, it's fair to say that when you first arrived, and then other officers again continued to arrive, it was a pretty chaotic scene.
Yes.
And is it fair to say that when you respond to a scene like this, you have someone lying on the floor and you don't know if they're breathing or dying, people are, and forgive me, but people are kind of barking out orders and yelling and trying to get things done, correct? As they try to help whoever needs help, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's fair to say then that this interview you conducted of Ms. McGee, is it correct to say that it happened while all of this chaos was going on in the hallway?
No.
Okay, can you explain what happened?
From my part, where I intervened into the interview with Ms. McGee, with Sergeant Tian and Detective Avila once Brookline Fire and Family Ambulance paramedics took over Ms. body. Once they were good, I stepped away and then I turned my attention to Ms. McGee, who's far off into the living room area. And that's when we commenced with the interview process with Ms. McGee.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. And it's fair to say that, I shouldn't have put it the way I did. The fact is that other first responders from both Brookline Fire Department and Fallon Hospital, they were still administering life-saving efforts to Mr. Savitz on the ground while you were talking, asking questions of Ms. McGee, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. McGee didn't resist talking to you, did she?
No.
And you were the one asking the, I withdraw the question. Were you the one asking the question?
Yes.
And it's fair to say that you were the one that was kind of controlling the question. You would ask the question, hear an answer, and then ask the next question, right?
Well, collectively, myself with Sergeant Tian and with Detective Avila.
Okay, so is it our understanding then that not just yourself, but the other two officers were also asking Ms. McGee questions?
Yes.
So collectively, you all three were kind of controlling the questioning. You were in control. You were asking the questions, you'd get an answer, and then you would ask what question you thought needed to be asked next.
Correct.
And in no time did Ms. McGee tell you, stop, I don't want to answer any more of your questions, correct?
Correct.
And it's fair to say that when you were asking her questions, she was upset.
Yes.
She appeared very anxious.
Yes.
Okay. And when you told us, and when you say that she was in the living room, it's fair to say that that's really only maybe 12 to 15 feet away from the body where Mr. Savitz was lying in the hallway, correct?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us, officer, if Mr. Savitz's body, to the best of your memory, were his feet closer to the front door, or was his head closer to the front door?
Feet were closer to the front door.
And do you recall a stairway in that hallway?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall seeing a pair of glasses on the landing?
I do not.
And is it fair to say that, to the best of your memory, Mr. Savitz's body, as he lay in the hallway, he was very close to the front door?
Yes.
When you were asking this, you and your other officers, Avila and Tian, were asking Ms. McGee questions. There was no reason in your mind not to ask her questions, correct? I mean, she didn't look injured, correct?
Correct.
She was answering your questions cogently, correct?
Correct.
She didn't seem confused, did she?
No.
And she was, is it fair to say, to characterize it, that, you know, when you would ask her a question, she would respond coherently to what your question asked?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't have any reason to stop questioning and say, you know, maybe we should stop this because you don't seem okay to us. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but there was none of that going on. You simply asked the questions, as many as you wanted, and that was the end of it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall hearing Ms. McGee say something to the effect of, I want to go to the hospital with my ex-husband, or words to that effect?
I do not recall that.
And your testimony on that particular question isn't that she did not say that, you just don't recall it as you sit here today.
Correct.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Any redraft? No, refresh.
Is that supposed to be like? Supposed to be white noise, is it? Oh, I can L. Why have they got a bench trial? There's no jury. Like, why have they got a sidebar? There's no jury. Oh, that noise would do my head in.
we observed there was a brown bag. There was, can I look over the report? Because
Is your memory
I'm
exhausted
sorry.
as to what you saw inside of Ms. McGee's car?
yes, sorry.
Would
She's a bit.
looking at your report refresh your memory?
Yes,
Your Honor, may the witness refresh his memory.
Sure, I obviously you didn't have this report. Do you have your report with you?
not in hand.
I have a copy, yes.
Sorry.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Officer Yanez, if you could please take a look at your report and look up when you're done.
This is the same courtroom as the Reed trial too, isn't it? No movement in the other court yet.
Is your memory refreshed?
Yes.
Officer Yanez, what did you see inside of Ms. McGee's car?
There was a bottle of wine, and there was also 2 water bottles in the front dash, also with her cell phone with the charger on the passenger side.
And the cell phone and the charger, was that laying on top of anything?
I believe it was on the passenger side.